the University of North Carolina school system spends at least $90 million annually on salaries for DEI staff members.
Contingencies also said that agents, quote, will be prepared to engage with Trump in U.S. Secret Service should he have arrived at Mar-a-Lago. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. So, Stephanie, I need to rant today. I need to rant about Biden, and I need to call attention to the complete ridiculousness and hypocrisy of the DEI agenda, because it is like ramping up big time as part of Biden's re-election campaign, especially the whole America is racist and only Joe Biden can save the Black community narrative. And okay, last Sunday, he gave this speech, a commencement speech at Morehouse College. And this is like an all-male, historically Black college. But instead of giving a speech that was like uplifting and inspiring, Biden chose to double down on the whole racial divide narrative, talking about George Floyd, how Black people don't have the privilege of democracy, and that Black people in America are unloved. So let me play this clip.
Today, you missed your high school graduation. You started college just as George Floyd was murdered, and there was a reckoning on race. It's natural to wonder, democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy? If Black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? The trail of broken promises still leave Black communities behind. What is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. Most of all, what does it mean, as we've heard before, to be a Black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, says the fucking racist old white man, right? And now
that is crazy. It's like,
yeah,
he's like telling them, like, hey, America doesn't like Black people. Like, that's what he's saying.
Pretty much. The country doesn't love you.
God.
And now I want to play a clip from Fox News. And this was Tim Scott, or Sean Hannity was talking with Senator Tim Scott about how the MSM like conveniently ignores Biden's very obvious history of racism and his current displays of racism. So let me, of course, it's not going to pull up what I want. Hang on one second. Here it is.
All right, here with more. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Senator, the demographics change. Well, let me ask you a first question. How is it that Joe Biden, we played that tape of Joe Biden and the things he said, you ain't Black, and, you know, they're going to put y'all back in chains.
Back in
chains.
The
worst thing is,
disgusting comments.
The thing that is the most unbelievable to me, and if it were a Republican, it probably would be career killing, which is him partnering with his friend and mentor, a former Klansman, to stop the integration of public schools and busing. Even Kamala Harris criticized him for that in that presidential primary debate in 2020. I was that girl, I believe she said. And because he didn't want public schools, his words, to be racial jungles. Am I like the only one in the country that dares to bring this up and ask incredulously, why doesn't anyone care about that?
You know they're not playing that on CNN. You know they're not playing it on MSNBC. They are not sharing the truth of who Joe Biden has always been. We should run commercial after commercial with Kamala Harris telling Joe Biden what he did in the 60s. And in addition to that, we should make sure that his words of the jungle. What a disgusting reflection on who he is. I will say this without any question. Jobs and justice are moving more Black folks towards Donald Trump, because we want fairness. And what we hear from Joe Biden over and over again is a pandering tour. But you're 100% right. To associate with a racist, a KKK member, and to celebrate it, you can only do that when all of the national media goes dark. They won't cover any negative news on Joe Biden.
I mean, he's not wrong.
No, he's not. And I have a clip I'll play just of the racist comments that he's said, like from the last campaign to this campaign. If I tried including all the comments that he has said since he was a politician, it would be like forever long. Cause like he's saying, this goes all the way back to the 60s. This guy is hands down the most racist politician in modern history. So here's just from the last few years, things that he has said.
Largest growth in population is Indian Americans moving from India. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. That's really, I'm a socialist. Romney wants to he said in the first 100 days, he's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains. Look, we need to reform the criminal justice to make sure black mothers feel confident when they send their child, their son out on the street, that they're going to be safe. We got to recognize that kid wearing a hoodie may very well be the next poet laureate and not a gangbanger. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids, wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. And if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Okay, I didn't realize there was music playing so loud in the background, but like, what the hell? If you're a black kid with a hoodie, like you might be the next, academic scholar, but you also might be a gangster. Like, what is he saying? This is so racist.
His whole career has been racist. And it's like, I'm sorry, but the hypocrisy is fucking unhinged, right? Like, Stephanie, if you were graduating from college, going back to this speech, would you find Biden's racial rant to be like an inspiring commencement speech?
No,
No,
hell no.
no. No matter what race I was, I wouldn't find it fucking inspiring. I think it was completely demeaning, divisive, totally condescending. And another example of how completely tone deaf this administration is and how desperate they are to get black votes with this victim narrative. And this was not in the clip, but in the same speech, Biden just rambled on. He vowed to call out the poison of white supremacy and root out systemic racism. And he made some totally fabricated comment about Georgia election laws being racist. And he said, quote, "Today in Georgia, they won't allow water to be available to you while you wait in line to vote in an election. What the hell is that about?" End quote. I'm pretty sure every state in the country has the same regulations when it comes to electioneering near polling places. And there's like nothing in any law that prohibits poll workers from giving people water or people bringing their own water or snacks. And they don't have excessively long lines to begin with. But it's like, fucking enough already. I think everyone is sick of the complete hypocrisy of this racist, rich as fuck old white man acting like he can relate to the black community or any underserved or underprivileged community for that matter. Like, no one wants to hear this shit anymore. It's a tired narrative. And so are all the lies that come out of this man's mouth, especially when he talks about his personal experiences that he's faced in the black community that literally never fucking happened. Like the time he said he was arrested as a civil rights marcher, and there was something about like getting shot at on a porch in a black neighborhood or whatever the fuck he said not too long ago. And it's like, I don't understand how anyone was clapping at this commencement speech, why students at a black college would want a racist old white man giving a speech at their school, or why anyone, especially black people and minorities, continue to give this racist old man a pass. Like, it blows my fucking mind.
Okay, you know what? It's been a long time since we had a good Tara rant. Like, I think we needed that. And I completely agree. And I actually came across clips on social media from this graduation where there were quite a few students that turned around and turned their back to him because
Yeah.
it's so appalling. And then he's bringing up George Floyd. And I forget what he said in that clip, but like something like trail of broken promises.
Yes. Coming from
Obviously, he's
you.
talking about himself because he was president right after the Floyd thing. And now he's saying that our country still has this major problem with racism. Well, then it sounds like you're the problem, Joe, because you've been president for the past 4 years. So maybe you should look in the mirror. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think they're trying to go back to what worked in the last election, but that's not going to work in this election because you're the one that's been running the country, or Obama, or whoever's behind the mask. But anyhow, like I don't understand why at this point, with all of these clips that have come out and just the state of the world right now, I don't understand why the majority of Black Americans are still voting Democrat. Like, what have any of these politicians done for them? But they tell them to vote blue and they obey. And it's absolutely absurd to me. And like, what has Biden done for Black communities during the last 4 years? What about all the promises that he made during the last campaign that were never filled? Instead, he floods their communities with illegal migrants who get all of these benefits instead of the citizens who actually live there legally and are in need of assistance. Crime is terrible. The cost of groceries is up over 300%. Housing costs have doubled. And on top of that, he's still to this day making racist comments left and right. Like, I don't understand why they find him appealing, or the Democrat Party, because it's not, they're not doing anything for the Black community.
And they haven't for decades. I mean,
Right.
literally decades. It's
Yep.
absolutely insane. And then, so right after this speech, he goes to an NAACP dinner in Detroit where he gives another speech. And this time he's talking about how, like, DEI is the core strength of the United States. And that's why he's proud to have the most diverse administration in history. And he has more African Americans and more women and more minorities than any other administration in all of history. And that's why the country is doing so damn well. And I was like, really? Is that
The
why? Like,
country's doing well. I didn't know.
yeah. Yeah. I guess we should all thank the Rainbow Squad in our government for inflation and rising prices in the supermarket, the worst crime rates in the country. Like, yeah, we're doing stellar under the most diverse administration in history, right? And then he makes some totally nonsensical comment about how they, which I can only assume is like Republicans or Trump supporters, but he says that they are trying to erase Black history because they don't understand that Black history is American history. And then he says, I'm not joking, which, as always, is like the telltale sign of him fucking lying. And of course, he can't give a speech without referring to Trump as a dictator who's trying to destroy democracy. So he brings up January 6th and this false narrative that Trump encouraged demonstrators to storm the Capitol and then he didn't do anything to stop them. And he says, quote, let me ask you, what do you think he would have done on January 6th if Black Americans had stormed the Capitol? No, I'm serious. What do you think? I can only imagine, end quote. So, Stephanie, basically, he's saying that if the protesters had been Black, then Trump would have done something about it, but he didn't because they're white. They were white people.
I mean, it's just, it's so absurd. And like, it's such a racist comment, but that's the thing. They're allowed to do that when they're Democrats, right?
Right.
Like, they're allowed to be racist and bigoted towards everyone when they're Democrats. And like, I really do firmly believe that the Democrats, not all of them, but especially the extreme, like leftist ones, are the most racist people in our society. And it's just
Yeah.
like Malcolm X said, it's going to be a white liberal that is their greatest threat because they act like they care when they're going to help all of these people in the Black community, when deep down they're the most hate-filled racists you can imagine. And like,
Mhm.
just look at it from a common sense standpoint. If you truly saw everyone as equal and you didn't want race to be an issue, you wanted to end racism, you would stop talking about it. You would stop talking about people's race. And instead, you would focus on their character and you would look at people, as human beings, not as Black people versus white people. You would just look at everyone as people. Yet they are the ones that are consistently labeling everyone, and they're putting everyone into these like completely outdated stereotypical buckets. That is racist. That is what racism is. And like, I'm sorry, but which party is it that's putting abortion clinics in Black neighborhoods? Who are the ones purposely letting crime run rampant in Black communities by letting these dangerous criminal offenders out without any bail so they can go and commit more crimes? Who are the ones that are demanding that Black people listen to them and vote for them? But then the moment one of them doesn't, they attack them. Like you had Tim Scott, that clip from Tim Scott earlier. They go relentlessly after him, Ben Carson, Justice Clarence Thomas, Candace Owens, and the list goes on and on. How is that not racist? The second a Black person disagrees with you on anything and you bring them down, you attack them because they didn't obey you. They didn't like follow what they're supposed to do. You know, they only want to say all this stuff because it's like a control tactic. They want to control the Black population because it's a vote for them. And it's so blatantly obvious. And I feel like they are so racist and it's so in your face, but then there's still so many people that are blindly following them and voting for them. And I don't get it. I don't know at this point in the game how you're not awake to that unless you're like purposely looking away.
Yeah, I don't either. Like like I said, it fucking blows my mind. But I'm going to get off the topic of race here for a second. And I just want to point out that if there's anybody who's looking for a job, the Biden campaign is currently searching for an internet meme expert to reach voters who don't pay attention to politics. So this job post came out on Monday, and Stephanie, it's an $85,000 a year salary. And I was reading in the Telegraph that the job posting states, quote, "The ideal candidate for this role is passionate about bringing political content to voters where they already are on the internet. The partner manager will be tasked with forming relationships with internet personalities, popular podcasters, and meme pages," end quote. What do you want to bet that this is going to be a DEI hire?
Yeah. And are they going to go and post to TikTok, which Biden's trying to ban, even though like he's on there? And okay, real quick, like along the lines of this, remember like when we were talking about how, you know, we'll get these comments and it's like, are these bots? Like, because you'll go to their profile page and there's like nothing there. We had one the other day and I was getting so pissed because this guy was such a jerk. And I go to his page and I shit you not, it was like AI. Like all the images were AI created. I'm like, this is freaking AI that's like bullying me. Like what the hell? And that's probably like hired from the freaking Biden administration. So had to throw that in there, but shit, for $85,000, I can make some memes. Absolutely.
Exactly. So, okay, I have another story I want to bring up along the DEI line. And okay, have you heard about the new Nancy Pelosi Fellowship?
Oh God, no. I can tell you I don't like it already. I don't need to know anything about it. I already hate it.
Well, I'm going to tell you about it anyway. It's a $1.6 million Biden admin program aimed at making America's diplomats more racially diverse. So I was reading about this in the Daily Caller, and according to federal grant documents, the state program, quote, seeks to support the department's goal of cultivating a workforce that reflects the diversity of the United States by developing a diverse cadre of future national security professionals and diplomats, end quote. And there was a grant solicitation posted also on Monday by the State Department, who's looking for an NGO to administer the program in a way that, quote, builds diverse pipelines into public service that inclusively represent the cultural, social, ethnic, racial, gender, and geographic diversity of the United States to pursue a career in national security and diplomacy, end quote. Because that's what we need, right? Like inclusive diplomats.
Yeah, and you know, this makes me think, like, look at their whole DEI thing, right? They never pick a Black person who's like well spoken and like knows their shit, right? Like look at KJP. Every single time she goes to a press conference, she looks like a fool. She looks like a complete idiot. Look at Kamala Harris. Can't freaking get through a 2-minute speech without completely embarrassing herself and the country. Is that on purpose? Because there are so many incredible, diverse people that they could put in positions of power, but it almost seems like they're purposely choosing people that are idiots. Like, my guess again is so they have control over the situation, because God forbid someone, you know, is diverse and actually like can have some control over the situation. Like, again, I will stand by it. I'm telling you, the left and the Democratic Party are totally racist. They're like the plantation owners. It is absurd to me. And I guarantee you, these people that they put in place, it's going to be the same thing. It's not going to be someone that's like well spoken and can carry on a conversation with all of these different countries. It's going to be someone like Kamala or KJP that make an ass of our country.
Yeah, or it's going to be purposely like some transgender,
Yeah.
like totally
Which
out there
that's going to go
wacko.
over well, considering you get murdered in a lot of other countries for
I
that.
know.
So great.
Send him as a diplomatic representative to Iran.
Yeah. What the heck?
All right, now I'm going to switch gears to the school system because I want to talk about the ludicrous amount of taxpayer money that is being spent on DEI in state-funded colleges. And Stephanie, this is fucking mind-blowing. This I saw this on Wednesday. And like we know a bunch of states have already been getting rid of DEI funding for state schools, and all these DEI employees have been laid off in like Texas and Florida. And there was a new report that was released on Tuesday from Open the Books, which is a federal spending watchdog. And they revealed that the University of North Carolina school system spends at least $90 million annually on salaries for DEI staff members. And they have been paying 686 staff members across 16 state campuses for the DEI ideology push. The Chapel Hill campus alone dishes out $30 million in DEI salaries, which I was reading in the Washington Examiner. They broke it down, and this is the equivalent of what could pay in-state tuition for roughly 1,100 students based on the school's $27,000 tuition cost, which fuck me, like that's insane for public school. But according to the report, 286 of these 686 staff members are dedicated full-time DEI staff. And then 398 of them are DEI related and like they serve on committees, councils, and other bodies that like advance the DEI agenda. Stephanie, listen to these salaries. The chief diversity officer at Chapel Hill makes over $317,000 a year. The vice provost for institutional equality and diversity at North Carolina State makes over $232,000 a year. Like, what the fuck? And I guess the UNC Board of Governors is supposed to vote on a measure to eliminate these DEI requirements across campuses this week, I think. But it's like the damage has been done, right? Like, it's insane. I guess on the bright side, it's being exposed, but
Well, I think they have been exposed. And I think most people, like me, a parent of a teenager that, is probably looking at colleges in the next few years, realizes college is a scam. And this is why stuff like this, like, screw you. Like, no, I'm going to have my kids start a business. Thanks. But what's interesting, I didn't put this together until you went over all of this at UNC. So outside of like the Ivy Leagues where all the protests have been happening, UNC, the protests have been happening there. That's where you had these like protests. And then you had like the frat guys come and like put up the American flag and start like, saying like the national anthem and stuff. And so I bet you any money it's because that's where that money's going to. That's where the $317,000 a year salary is going to. They're setting up protests for Palestine where these kids were asked and they have no freaking idea why they're protesting because they were told to do it and they're probably getting paid. They're probably getting a chunk of that money. Like $317,000 a year. Give me a break. This is like, it's just so angering. And as a parent, it's like, no, I'm not going to buy into this scam anymore. Sorry. And like, here is the big difference. Okay. you have Biden spending all of that money on DEI departments, which ironically are usually run by white liberals. And then you have Trump, who, when he was president, used that money to actually fund Black colleges, like actually give the money in scholarships to Black students so they could go to school and get an education. So again, like, who is the racist here? It's like, wake up, people. It's right in our faces. Just look at their actions and you'll figure it out. It's not that hard.
Yeah, it's again, the term I've used this whole podcast is this blows my mind. But now I need to call attention to how the AMC, which used to be one of my favorite channels, is ruining one of my all-time favorite movies, Goodfellas. Like, have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah. That is such a good movie.
Oh my God, I love it. I think it's better than the Godfather series. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a movie from 1990 and it's got like all-star cast, Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, and it's based on a true story about the Italian mafia and this mobster Henry Hill who becomes an FBI informant, and it's really just an awesome movie. So if you haven't seen it and you like movies, like mob movies, you need to go watch it immediately, but don't watch it on AMC. So I was reading in the Blaze, but I guess AMC has put a trigger warning on this movie that states, quote, this film includes language and or cultural stereotypes that are inconsistent with today's standards of inclusion and tolerance and may offend some viewers, end quote. Like, what? What the
Oh my
actual
God.
fuck? And like, I know there's standard viewer discretion advised, and I get like putting up a warning for nudity or strong language or violence, which is what is on the Godfather series, right? So the Godfather has this normal viewer discretion, and then Goodfellas has this ridiculous thing about inclusivity and tolerance. And so I was reading there's this former NYPD officer who actually played a cop in the movie Goodfellas, and I love what he told the New York Post because he said, quote, the fucking political correctness has fucking taken everything away. This is how life was back then. It was not a clean, beautiful thing. You can't cleanse history. If you want to tell true history, you got to tell it the way it is, end quote. And he's exactly right. And so I'm calling for a boycott of AMC right now because as much as I used to love this channel, like this is just bullshit.
It is. And I mean, if it makes you feel any better, AMC stock is dropping to the point that like hedge fund managers are shorting it. So they're
Oh, good.
betting on its complete demise. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, I just kind of sit back and laugh because Hollywood is dying, and so is the music industry. So they can sit there with their DEI bullshit all they want, but no one's watching anymore. It's like there's influencers and there are talented people that are rising up through social media, and less people are tuning into TV and movies. I can't tell you how many incredible musicians that I have seen pop off in the last few months just from posting on social media. And they don't have a contract. They're not part of the whole like satanic cult in Hollywood. They're doing their own thing and people are loving it. People are supporting them. And I think like the whole DEI thing has really ruined our culture. And maybe that's part of it because they're like shoving it down our throats to the point that you can't even watch a show now on whether it's Netflix or Disney.
Yeah.
You can't watch a show without an LGBTQ storyline or
Mhm.
some type of like racial divide. And if such a show exists, like the one you're talking about, they make apologies for it. And it's like people are sick of it. Why do people watch TV? Because they want to tune out from the madness of the world and they want to just be entertained. But it's like they're injecting it into all this stuff. And the more they push it, the more they're trying to keep us apart. But it's not working because instead of keeping us apart, they're waking everyone up to this agenda. And guess what? Like, it's not 2020 anymore. We see through the BS and we're not afraid to talk about it now. So it's like keep pushing because you're pushing people to like awaken or whatever we're calling it now, the Great Awakening.
Yeah.
But okay, we talked about Biden. I cannot end the episode without talking about Trump because this is just like it's so freaking insane. So I, first of all, like I really hope that Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida has like the most amazing bodyguard, because this woman is exposing the deep state through this Mar-a-Lago declassified whatever documents case. So it was found out this week in Discovery that the FBI had a policy statement regarding the use of deadly force, which in part said, quote, law enforcement officers of the Department of Justice may use deadly force when necessary, talking about the Mar-a-Lago raid. So then, of course, I go online, and what do I find from all the mainstream media? They're saying, oh, fact check, fact check, fact check. This is misinformation, disinformation. But just like last time, you read the article, it's not misinformation. They say exactly that. But the fact check part is that some FBI spokesperson said, quote, the FBI followed standard protocol in this search as we do for all search warrants, which includes a standard policy statement limiting the use of deadly force. No one ordered additional steps to be taken, and there was no departure from the norm in this matter. I am sorry, no departure from the norm. We're talking about an ex-president that is running for president again that has Secret Service. How can you say, oh, we did everything as standard protocol and didn't depart from the norm? What? Like, an
Yeah.
ex-president has never been raided in history. You absolutely should not follow standard protocol. And maybe you should do things like a little bit more gentle, knowing you're walking in to a situation where you have armed men protecting this guy, right? Like, so
Yeah, and I will say, like, I read a lot of stuff about people saying, like, well, it is standard procedure. And I can tell you from being a cop that yes, those things are written into your warrants. Like, there's always some kind of policy or plan. But like you just said, this is not a standard situation. It's a fucking prior former president who's also running for office. It's like the game plan should not be the same.
right. Well, and there's more. So I'm going to get your input on this next piece, because this is where I think, like, hey, I'm calling bullshit on this. Okay. So agents that went to the raid, they were instructed to wear unmarked polo or collared shirts, and were planning to bring, quote, standard issue weapons, ammo, handcuffs, and medium and large size bolt cutters. And then contingency plans were also created that had a paramedic at the scene in case of someone being injured, and the name of the nearest local trauma center, complete with an address, phone number, which was also included. Um, so let's see, where was the other part? Oh, here's the other part. Contingencies also said that agents, quote, will be prepared to engage with Trump and U.S. Secret Service should he have arrived at Mar-a-Lago, end quote. So let me just ask you, okay, as a former police officer, you're going to a raid, you're instructed to wear plain clothes, have your weapons on you. You're going on an estate that, first of all, has like security everywhere, cameras everywhere. But not only that, it's the estate of a former president who it has Secret Service, armed Secret Service, that their whole job is to keep him alive. And you show up with weapons and plain clothes. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Like, to me, that just seems like, are they trying to start something to where the Secret Service or shots are fired or something because they show up and they're no, like, how do they know they're cops? How do they know they're there for documents? Like, doesn't that seem odd that they would tell them to wear plain clothes?
To me, it does because every search warrant I've ever been involved in, you're identified as law enforcement. Like
Yeah,
you have your raid, even if you're a plainclothes detective, you have a raid jacket on that says police on it. Like there's
right.
something identifying you as law enforcement. So I don't know how the FBI operates because I have no experience with being an FBI officer, but that seems a little
I mean, if you're
odd to
sticking
me.
to standard protocol and like that's your defense, well, this wasn't standard protocol. You don't tell them to show up in
Yeah.
polo outfits and then like let's bring an ambulance because if you see Trump and his Secret Service plan on engaging. What the fuck does that mean? So this gets better, okay? So your boyfriend, Senator Josh Hawley,
Oh, yes.
grilled Merrick Garland in a hearing over this information that came out in court. Because the other thing that came out was that the FBI is saying they objected to this and they were like, we don't want to do it. This is a bad idea. And Merrick Garland personally overrode the FBI's decision. Okay. So let's see here. They called the raid an armed storming of a private residence meant to aid chief political rival President Joe Biden, while being personally authorized by Attorney General Merrick Garland and supported over FBI objections by DOJ leadership who did not, quote, give a damn about the optics of these unprecedented steps. That's freaking powerful. So Senator Hawley reads that, and Merrick Garland's like, that's not what it says. The article didn't say that. That's not true. And Senator Hawley's like, okay, well, we're going to submit this article in the hearing because that's exactly what it says verbatim. It says that you overrode the FBI's objections. And he's like, of course, like literally stuttering. He's like, what? Like literally like didn't know what to say because he's been caught. And so
Again.
again,
Like
which
he
nothing's
shouldn't
going
even
to
have a
happen.
job.
Nothing's
Yeah.
going to happen. No one's going to be held accountable. But I think it's just like, okay, we how long have we been talking about they're going to try to take out Trump? They're not going to let him run. Well, maybe that was their plan. Oh, we're going to go to raid the house for these documents that the fucking archive library wants. And then, oh, like his Secret Service pulled out a gun on our guys in plain clothes. And then we had to fire back. And it was this horrible, like, I mean, literally, like that sounds like what they were trying to accomplish. And so then back to like the actual court case, right? So Trump's attorneys, they said that the warrant for the raid itself was flawed and didn't meet the criteria of the Fourth Amendment, in that the general warrant allowed a complete search of the 17-acre estate containing 58 bedrooms and 33 bathrooms, instead of being confined to specific areas where documents were believed to be stored. And you talked about this before, how like these warrants have to be so specific of exactly what you're looking for and where you're looking for it. And we know they were like in Melania's closet, they were in his teenage son's closet, like dresser drawers. They were everywhere. And Trump's lawyers were kicked out while they were searching. They also wanted the security cameras to be turned off. So, like, everything about this is just so corrupt. But I have a theory that this Judge Eileen Cannon, the reason she hasn't already dismissed this case or thrown out the case, whatever the legal jargon is because she is wanting to first expose everything that's happening. Because what she's doing is she's releasing these documents and ordering the redactions to be removed so that the public could see all of this shit that they redacted, like being in plain clothes and ordering to, you know, use lethal force and engage with Trump and Secret Service. I think she wants the public to see that. And I think that's the only reason why she hasn't thrown out this case yet, because she is going to reveal all this shit. And that's why I say she better have a damn good bodyguard, because she is no friend of Biden's right now, or Merrick Garland. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
I hope you're right. And it's like, how much more obvious does this shit need to get?
right.
Like, how much more obvious for people to realize what's fucking going on here?
Well, and just imagine if this were Trump's DOJ going into Biden's garage with plain clothes and weapons to raid it. And then they found out all of this. People would be like, it was a coup. Like he was
Yeah.
going to take him out. It was going to assassination attempt, lock him up. You know, that's how they would react. But instead, all the mainstream media, they're like, oh, fact check, fact check. And then you read the article and all the facts are there. They just put
But
the
they're
fact
like,
check label to try to make it
but they're
seem
like,
like,
oh,
yeah,
it's MAGA, whatever you want to call it, conspiracy
right,
theorists that are
right.
saying that.
Even though this is coming out like in a court of law,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so crazy. And so obviously Trump's livid and he's like posting all these things like 25th Amendment, Biden's trying to assassinate me, which he should. Like that is clearly what happened here. And of course, the media is not going to go along with it, but that doesn't mean we're not. I mean, all over social media, people are talking about this and are freaking like shocked, but not shocked. It's like you're surprised that it's so blatant and not more covered up, but you're not surprised at the same time because they do whatever they want and they get away with it. So,
Yep.
Oh my gosh, what a fiery episode. That was wild. Lots of things going on. This campaign's ramping up. So, man, hold on, people, because there's going to be a lot more coming. And yeah, we'll keep everyone posted. But thanks for, oh, you have something?
I just want to say we are taking a little break next week, vacation wise, but we have some really great episodes planned for you guys, especially when it comes to the fun conspiracy stuff. So make sure you guys tune in next week.
Oh yeah. It's my favorite type of episodes. We're going to go down the rabbit hole. So we'll see you here for that and have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.